This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by SAIC. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, the people piece of the shutdown dilemma, the missing link in AI integration, and the forgotten side of the government shutdown. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. The Congressional Budget Office estimates about 750,000 people are on furlough now because of the shutdown. Federal leaders say that number, though, is likely to ebb and flow as the shutdown continues. Jeff Neal is principal at ChiefHRO and former Chief Human Capital Officer at the Department of Homeland Security. Welcome back, Jeff. It's great to see you. What's the cause of the numbers shifting? Some people furloughed at the beginning of the shutdown. As it continues, some folks will go back. Some folks that were working when it started will be furloughed, and so on. What's driving that?
Well, I think, Francis, what happens is you've got people who are accepted and who are working because their jobs are safety, security, protecting life and property, etc. You have some people who are working because they're not paid out of appropriated money. Their money comes from a revolving fund of some sort, like GSA's building funds, the defense-wide working capital fund. What you run into, though, is those working capital funds are frequently replenished with appropriated money because their customers get appropriated dollars. So you may look at an agency like the Defense Logistics Agency, for example, where most of the people are not paid out of appropriated money, but the money that feeds that non-appropriated account is appropriated dollars. And because their customers don't have money, they can't buy things, and because they can't buy things, the fund starts depleting. And then at some point there's no money available, and then those people are going to be furloughed because there's no money for them. You also find cases where people are brought back because they've discovered that something is creating a problem, that it's putting either property or life at risk or vital programs, and so those people might come back. So that number will go up and down as long as this furlough lasts, or this lapse in appropriations lasts.
One of the things that came out of the 2019 shutdown, the longest one in history, 34 days if I recall correctly, was that Congress passed a law that provided that federal employees, whether they were furloughed or not,
right,
would be paid for the time that they missed after appropriations were reinstated. Guidance from OMB this week sounds contrary to that. What should federal employees think, in your mind, in your view, about what the possibility of them getting paid versus not getting paid as a result of the shutdown would be?
Well, I think when you're looking at a difference of opinion between the law and some politician, err on the side of believing the law. You know, politicians can say whatever they want, but saying it doesn't make it so. And the law does say that federal employees who are furloughed do get back pay for that time. And that was passed because in the past, they actually had to put in the appropriations bills every time there was a shutdown. By the way, the federal employees will get paid. So this law, which was actually signed by President Trump, it actually provides that they will get back pay. Now, Russ Vaught at OPM has kind of made it clear that he thinks they don't necessarily have to get paid. But again, saying that doesn't make it so. The law says that they will. And the Constitution actually does specifically address what it refers to as ex post facto laws, retroactive laws, and it prohibits them in Article 1. So Congress doesn't have the authority to retroactively take things from people. So if they decided, for example, in whatever bill they create to resolve this lapse, that they're going to repeal that, that would repeal it prospectively for future shutdowns, but it wouldn't repeal the law for this shutdown. For this shutdown, that law still applies. I think it's extremely likely, probably a 99% likelihood, that those employees are going to get paid, and they shouldn't worry that they're going to be missing a week or two or a month of pay. I'd hate to see them worried about that.
You were in government during the 2013 shutdown. What did you and your colleagues in the human capital community take away from that contributed to the body of knowledge about how to handle this and how to manage people through and after a shutdown?
Well, the biggest thing was communicating with people and making certain they understood what was expected. They understood whether they were accepted or not. They needed to understand that what we told them could change as circumstances changed, and communicating with them, sharing the information about what was going on, and doing that as rapidly as possible. And then doing the shutdown, which has already been done, in an orderly way, and then standing things up again in an orderly way, because you can't just, you don't just flip a switch and all of a sudden the entire government is operating again. So I think that's really an important part of it. It's a messy process. You do learn as you go. And when you learn a lot in one shutdown, it helps you for the next one, but you're going to learn something new in the next shutdown. Something that didn't happen 12 years ago is going to happen this time. And so they're going to have to be flexible. They're going to have to pay attention to what's going on and adapt as they go.
I went back and looked at some of the coverage that we did on the 2019 shutdown, and we talked a lot at that time on the programs that I hosted then about what was happening in the moment, and not enough, I don't think, about what happens and what people should be prepared for when the government reopens. And as you say, you don't just flip a switch. What are the things that people maybe don't anticipate that they'll have to deal with, when the government reopens?
Well, one of the things is that a lot of the stuff that federal employees do is going to keep accumulating whether they're there or not. So people who might have been kind of overworked before are now going to have a backlog of stuff when they come back. And they're going to have customers who expect things to be done instantly, and they're not going to be able to do things instantly. So they're going to probably have to start juggling priorities to figure out what to do first to get things going again. You may find that, maybe I'm working with you and you're not viewing what I'm working on as the priority. You've got a bigger priority you want to deal with, but my priority is really important to me. And so we're going to have to try to figure out how we synchronize our return to work and our getting things done again. And that can get pretty messy, actually. So I think that's going to be one of the difficult things for people to deal with.
What have you seen as the successful way or ways to try to navigate that messiness? And who are the stakeholders that are involved in all of that? It strikes me that just keeping it within individual work units probably isn't the right way to go.
Not necessarily, and it's maybe in some cases not even keeping it within individual agencies, because a lot of the work that happens in government happens in what we refer to as the interagency, as though that's a real thing. It's actually the relationships between the different agencies that intersect in a lot of different ways. And those folks are going to have to try to work out between different agencies what the priorities are going to be and what they're going to pay attention to first. So I think that's going to be really important. Within agencies, obviously the senior leadership of the agency can set some priorities and tell people, here's what we want to do first. And they need to be thinking about that right now. Most of them probably are. And they need to set some priorities and let people know what they should do first, and then how to ease back into getting the work done.
What's the best way for leaders to communicate with people to the extent that they're allowed to during the shutdown, and what are the messages that are important to communicate when people do come back?
So during the shutdown, they can only communicate with them about things relative to the shutdown that are essential for the employee to know, like when they should come back to work. They can't communicate with them about the work because they're shut down. And there's been specific guidance issued on that over many shutdowns that tells them, you can't be out there dealing with the employees and telling them, okay, here's what we want you to do as soon as you get back, and we want you to think about this. That's forbidden. You can't do that. But anything related to the shutdown itself and what the employees need to know about that, they can do. And they can be prepared on day one when people come back with a whole list of things that they want to communicate. And that's what most of them will end up doing.
Jeff, it's always great to have you on. Thanks for your insight.
Happy to be here.
You can read more about workforce issues from the shutdown on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com.